So here we go. 3, 2, 1. Is it possible? I mean, is it remotely possible that a 1972 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 900 square feet mobile home could compete with the same buyers as a 5-year-old custom-built 3,000 square foot home? Is it possible? Is it remotely possible that these two properties could compete, be in a competitive state for the same buyers? Come on back and we'll talk about it. Hi, this is Bryan Reynolds. You're listening to the Appraisal Update podcast, brought to you by the very fine folks over at Appraiser eLearning. I hope you're doing well. Thanks for joining me today. If you need some education, please check us out over at appraiserelearning.com. We hope to see you in Las Vegas at the Appraisal Summit coming up very, very soon, where Appraiser eLearning is honored to be a partner with NAA to host the Appraisal Summit. Check it out at appraisalsummit.com. So the question was, is it even remotely possible? Well, what if I told you that mobile home, I could back up my pick-em-up truck. I got a big one. I could back my truck up to that sucker and drag that off the site pretty quick. The custom-built home, what are we going to do with it? Because it's in our way. Because you see, in this scenario, the ideal improvement is a 10 or 12,000 square foot home, because both of these properties back to the Gulf. Now, I tricked you a little bit, just a little bit. I tricked you a little bit in that it's not really the mobile home competing for the same buyers as that custom-built home, is it? Not really at all. What's in a competitive state for those same buyers, however, is the property, not the improvement which is situated on the property. And guys, what we're talking about right now is highest and best use. And why you as an appraiser, that's one of your most important decision-making processes is highest and best use. I mean, it might be the most important decision. If it's not the most, it's certainly one of the most important decisions you make as a practicing appraiser. How do you know what you're appraising until you do a proper highest and best use? I mean, maybe the highest and best use is not what you see there today, as in my example. Maybe you should be appraising that as land, that the improvement offers no contribution whatsoever. You don't know what's comparable until you do a proper highest and best use analysis. See, in my scenario, if you were appraising either one of those two properties, you wouldn't look for other mobile homes unless you found one that backed to the Gulf like this one did. You also wouldn't try and find other 3,000 square foot custom built home unless it backed to the. See, the highest and best use in this example revealed that vacant land. People are going to buy this property not for the improvements there. As I said, they're going to remove those from the site. The first one they're going to remove, more than likely, they're going to remove that mobile home and have it site ready for that big 10,000, 12,000 square foot home. What are you going to do with the 3,000 square foot home that's in our way? Remember, it's in the way. What are you going to do with that? Yeah, you could demo it and remove the debris. That's going to take you a lot longer than dragging that mobile home off. You could pick it up and move it. Just pick the house up and move it. That happens. That's going to take time and money. You could retrofit that sucker, right? You could add on to it to create that 12,000 square foot home. That's probably going to cost more money too, because you're going to have to figure out how to move things around and restructure it. You might be surprised that the lot that has the mobile home on it might sell for more money and faster than the one with the 3,000 square foot custom built home on it, that both the improvements are in our way. That's why it's so important to do a proper highest and best use analysis. In these scenarios, vacant land or land sales would be what would be comparable if you were asked to appraise this property and conducted a proper highest and best use analysis. So when we talk about highest and best use, it's critically important, and I want you to think for a minute. What does an investor want when an investor makes an investment? If I let you borrow $100, what do I want back? Well, first of all, I want my $100 back. I'm not giving charity. I'm making an investment. Unless I know you and I'm doing a favor, right? I want my $100 bill back. And then what do I want? My good buddy John Zambrano, rest his soul, a good friend of mine, passed away a few years ago. It saddens me. But John would always say, I want a little juice. I need a little juice on that. And a prudent investor wants the most juice they can get. So I want a return of the $100, and I want a little, as John says, juice. So a prudent investor, when they make an investment, they want their investment back. So that's called a return of, right? I want a return of my investment. And then I want a return on my investment as well. I want to make some money on my money. Guys, that's really highest and best use in a nutshell. We've got some land over there. What do you want to put on it? Well, there's 4 criteria to highest and best use. Guys, you really need to understand this. Think about it for a moment. If you were in the hot seat in court or in front of your regulatory board, but let's just stick with court. You're in court. Well, Bryan, I'm never going to court. I'm not that person. I'm not the appraiser going to go to court. I don't like that. That's scary. Attorney's scary. I'm just never going to do court work. Well, guess what? If you get a subpoena, guess where you're going to be? You're going to be in court, whether you want to be or not. And just think for a moment. You're sitting in the hot seat. I'm over there whispering questions for the attorney to come ask you. They say, Mr. or Mrs. Appraiser, did you do a proper highest and best use analysis? Yes or no? What do you have to say to that? If you say no, you're toast. Of course you're going to say yes to that. That's a lead question. We're leading you down a path that we want you to go. And what does USPAP say? Well, USPAP talks about that in the development standard and in the reporting standard. Standards Rule 1-3, market analysis is highest and best use. And this is line item 504 in your USPAP book, page 18. And if you've heard me before, if you've ever been in a USPAP class, you hear me say, really, really, really get to know the first 24 pages of USPAP. Standard 1, Standard 2, and all that stuff before it. The rules, remember those rules, the ethics rule, competency rule, record-keeping rule, scope of work rule, jurisdictional exception rule, those rules. And then before the rules come the definitions, I'm going backwards, which are binding. And before that's the preamble, which is also binding. So from the preamble to the end of Standard Rule 2, you need to be extremely familiar with that if you're an appraiser claiming to adhere to USPAP. It's your minimum requirements. So get to know them. Get very familiar with the first 24 pages. So on page 18, line item 504, Standards Rule 1-3, market analysis and highest and best use. When necessary for credible assignment results in developing a market value opinion, an appraiser must develop an opinion of the highest and best use of the real estate. You must. Must is a strong word. Must means you got to do it. So you're back in the hot seat. Did you develop and write your report in accordance to USPAP? Yes or no? I think you better say yes to that. I had a student one time said, well, I hope so. Or I tried to, right? Well, doesn't Standard Rule 1 say that you have to develop an opinion of highest and best use? I don't know is not a good answer. Yes, it does. Doesn't Standard Rule 2.2a, Roman numeral 12, say when an opinion of highest and best use was developed by the appraiser, state that opinion and summarize the support and rationale for that opinion? Yes, it does. Okay, so you developed your appraisal and you wrote your appraisal report in accordance to USPAP. Yes, I did. Great. That means you did a proper highest and best use. Please tell the court what the 4 criteria of highest and best use is. Well, I don't remember the textbook definition. Okay, well, just put it in your own words. What are the 4 criteria of highest and best use? What's the 4 test? Guys, if you can't answer that question, look out for the follow-up from the attorney. Mr. or Mrs. Appraiser, if you were on the jury, would you believe you? I mean, how did you do a proper highest and best use analysis when you can't even tell me the 4 tests of highest and best use? Guys, you really need to have a good critical understanding of this. What's legally permissible? What can I legally fit on this property? I want to build a shopping center. Well, guess what? That's not legally permissible. So put that one to the side. What will physically fit? Because multifamily is allowed. So we're going to build a 400-unit apartment complex, right? Well, guess what? 400 units won't physically fit. What's financially feasible? What makes sense? Now, guys, when I say that, I'm not saying I got money in my pocket and I can build any of those. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying what's financially feasible. Again, when an investor makes an investment, what does an investor want back? A return of and a return on. So what can we build that will physically fit, legally permissible, physically fit, that we're going to make money on? At the end of the day, when the agents of production, land, labor, capital, and management are satisfied, what are we going to make money on? Okay, well, we'll make money on these 5 different things we could build. Which one should we build? Well, the one that we should build is the one that we're going to make the most money on, maximally productive. It is the single most highest and best use of the land. Please get your head around this, guys. We did, Clay and I did a tax appeal years ago, and the other side was arguing that all these land sales were comparable. We said, well, in our opinion, those aren't comparable. And they're like, what do you mean? These properties are very proximate. I mean, you could throw a rock and hit them. There's a land sale there and 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 a land sale there. They're highly comparable. And our position was, well, do any of those land sales have height restrictions on them? No. So you could build a 40-story building on them. I suppose you could. Well, our subject property has a height restriction that you can only legally go up 2 stories. So since we have a height restriction of 2 stories, and those have no height restrictions at all, in our professional opinion, they're not comparable. Do you see how important this is? You know, my mentor shared with me many years ago, and I've used this a lot, and it's served me very well. Thank you, George. Mr. George Cox. More buildings get knocked down than fall down. More buildings get knocked down than fall down. And if you think about that, that's really true. How often do you see a building just fall over? Maybe an old barn somewhere, but you typically don't see buildings fall over. They outlive their economic life, and they no longer are indicative of the ideal improvement. They no longer represent the highest and best use of the land, so they are removed in order to prepare the land for the ideal improvement. I strongly encourage you to take a class on highest and best use. I'm going to be working on one real soon. It's one of the most important decisions you make in the appraisal process. Get your arms around this highest and best use stuff, guys. It's critically important. Let's say that you're asked to appraise a property for someone thinking about selling their property. And there's an old house on that land, and you just appraise it as a house, and you don't do a proper highest and best use. And sure enough, the property owner, she sells it straight away for what you appraised it for, because that's what she listed it for under relying upon your opinion. The buyer buys it and turns around and immediately sells it for 5 times that amount. You see, the buyer wasn't someone that was going to buy that property and live in the house. The buyer was somebody that was going to buy that property and knock that house down in order to build an ideal improvement there. And the first buyer recognized, oh my gosh, I'm getting a steal of a deal on this, because the typical buyer is not going to buy it and live in it as a house. They're going to put a Walgreens there, or they're going to put 3 houses on this lot, or they're going to do something different than what's there now. Don't you think that first owner, seller, might be a little upset with you? When she sold it for what you appraised it for, she was relying on your opinion for that. She hired you for that. And then she just watched it immediately be flipped and sold for substantially more, and they knocked the house over. Understand highest and best use. It's critically important. We could talk about this for a long, long time, and I hope to talk about it again with you very, very soon. There's another thing that you need to consider when you identify the ideal improvement. You then have to identify the ideal placement on the site to achieve maximum productivity. We had a property, and the gentleman probably built the ideal improvement. It was a strip center. The problem was he set the strip center sideways on the site. What does a AAA rated tenant want? They typically want high visibility. This was a major street and had high traffic count with a lot of potential visibility, but he destroyed the marketability of that property, not because of what he built, but how he set it on the site. He set it sideways, and he should have set it facing the major road. Even if he had to compromise a unit or two, he should have set it facing that road where there would be high visibility. And that's really hard, talking to a client saying, you really ought to just knock it down and start over again. Wait a minute, I just spent several $1 million building this thing. Yeah, I know. You're going to have a hard time renting this space out, because most of these renters are going to want that high visibility that you no longer offer because of where you situated it on the site. Do yourself a favor, take a highest and best use course, take a seminar, maybe take 2 or 3. This is a very important topic. I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you're staying safe, and I hope you're making lots and lots of money. You might have slowed down a little bit. Be a great time to knock out some education or reorganize your office. If we can help you anyway, please contact us. You've been listening to the Appraisal Update Podcast, brought to you as always by the very fine folks of Appraiser eLearning. I'm your host, Bryan Reynolds. Until next time, happy appraising.
The Appraisal Update Podcast is brought to you by Appraiser eLearning.